Welcome to the Practice Squad, a show where we make the replacement refs look like pros. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Excited for our first show.
Yeah, me too. So this show's live on YouTube each and every week at 8:30 p.m. Pacific. Today was a special 2 p.m. start time because there's no Monday Night Football. Normally, we'll be live at 8:30 p.m. Pacific right after Monday Night Football. If you're tired of the punditry or just want a fresh voice, come listen to a couple random dudes talk about football and have a good time. So I know we're really excited to jump in, but since this is a new podcast, I wanted to first give a little bit of background about this show. So both myself and my co-host Joseph have been good friends and football nerds for a long time. And each week during the regular season, we talk on the phone about the games from the previous weeks, issues within the NFL, and predictions for the upcoming week. A couple of months ago, I told Joseph that it would be really cool if we made a podcast out of these calls. So what we're going to cover on this show and beyond is really stuff we were already talking about week to week. We're not journalists to bring you every bit of news, thank goodness, but we are here to help offer our opinions and have fun discussions about football. We're going to do our best each week to stay informed, but if you ever catch us saying something factually incorrect, feel free to call us out. You'll see that the YouTube live chat is available now and will be available for the entire show, every show, for the viewers to share your thoughts, rants, and ask questions. As this show matures, feedback will be critical, so please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below as well. In future episodes, we're going to be chatting about our general impressions of the previous week's games in the regular season, but since there's none to talk about this week, tonight is going to be packed with some special preseason segments. We're going to cover trades, free agency pickups in the offseason, major rule changes in the offseason, sleeper teams, game predictions, and a whole lot more. Since this is our first show, there's a real possibility that there could also be some technical problems. So please let us know in the chat, in the live chat, if anything seems off to you, and we'll do our best to fix it on the spot. So if we have any live viewers, if we could go ahead and get a sound off in the chat, say hello, hi, how's it going? Just whatever to let us know that you're hot on your end. That would be great. So I think I'm ready to dive in. Are you ready to dive in, man?
I think so. Let's do it.
All right. So our first segment for today is major trades and free agency pickups. Also players released, just kind of any major changes in the offseason. So we're going to go ahead and start with the NFC. NFC North specifically. We'll just go by division. I think that'll be the easiest. So NFC North. So the first team we're going to talk about is Chicago. So Chicago signed wide receiver Allen Robinson. It's pretty big change. And they just traded, was it 2 days ago or yesterday?
I think it was official yesterday.
Yeah, okay. So they traded for Khalil Mack yesterday. That was a huge piece of drama. We'll definitely go into that. They released Mike Glennon, who probably most people don't care about, but I put there anyway because he's a quarterback that's had probably 5 or 6 different teams in his career.
Yeah, he's been traded around a lot.
Yeah. And then they also picked up, for you 49er fans, they picked up Aaron Lynch, who was a linebacker and one of the guys I actually had a lot of hope in to be a decent pass rusher. But because of weight problems, injury problems, he just never really got off the ground. He was suspended 1 year. So the Chicago Bears picked him up. The 49ers are done with him now. I think that was a good point to cut the cord with him. The next team, Detroit. Really, there was no major trades with Detroit or major changes. Green Bay released Jordy Nelson. That's a big one. They released Jordy Nelson. They picked up or they signed Jimmy Graham, who was a free agent this offseason. And they also traded for DeShone Kizer, who was he drafted with the Cleveland Browns last year or 2 years ago?
I want to say it was 2 years ago, but can't know exactly for sure.
Okay.
Forgot.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm assuming he'll be the first backup for Aaron Rodgers. I honestly don't know. I
think it was last year because I think they started playing him right away. So I'm like 80% sure it was last year, and they started right away, so they dropped him pretty fast.
They dropped Kaiser? Or you're talking about after
Like he
you're
only
talking
had
about
1 year
in Cleveland.
experience. Yeah, I think
Okay.
he was drafted last year.
Okay. So yeah, I'm assuming he'll be the second string quarterback for Aaron Rodgers. Okay. So then Minnesota had some big ones. Kirk Cousins signed massive, disgustingly large contract. So one of the segments I think in a later show this season we're going to be talking about contracts and how just stupid expensive they are, and just all the mentality behind it, the philosophy for it, how teams are getting themselves into some real ruts because of contracts. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that today, but we are just going to mention the Kirk contract. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but the Kirk Cousins contract was just very large. I think, did he break a record last year for?
So he might have broken the record for guaranteed money.
Okay.
Aaron Donald, I think, just broke the record for defensive guaranteed money, or maybe now it was Khalil Mack. I think they broke consecutive records, but for overall defense versus offense, I think Kirk still might have the overall record for that.
Okay.
For guaranteed. Oh, well, who knows? Aaron Rodgers just signed. We got to check up on that. Aaron Rodgers just signed a huge extension as well. So
Was
up
that
until
today?
the Rodgers,
Like,
no, it
is
was
this
the last few
breaking
days.
news or okay?
No, it was like 3 or 4 days ago. Aaron Rodgers did that, so that might have broken the offensive record for extension guaranteed money.
Okay. So in Minnesota, the next big one was Sheldon Richardson, was another free agency pickup. He had played for a year with Seattle last year. At the time, there were headlines saying Sheldon Richardson, the trade that will put Seattle over the top to win the Super Bowl, and that didn't happen, obviously, since they didn't even make the playoffs. So he was picked up by Minnesota. And then they also traded for Trevor Siemian from the Broncos as well. So I don't know. I'm assuming Trevor Siemian's going to be the second string. I don't know who else they have on the practice squad, but I'm assuming he'll be second string.
Yeah, probably.
He kind of went nowhere with the Broncos, so hopefully he'll have some kind of decent career with Minnesota. All right, moving on to NFC South. So New Orleans traded. So they acquired Teddy Bridgewater from the Jets in a trade. So I'm assuming he's going to be. This is an interesting one. I don't know if he's going to be just the backup role, or if he's going to be the guy that they're hoping to foster into a starting role once Breeze retires. What do you think?
That's what I was thinking. That's actually, I have that for. I looked at the Jets. That's what the note that I had was. I think that they didn't really trust Tom Savage. And, Bridgewater's only had a couple years of experience, and he's shown some promise, some potential at times. So they're probably thinking Breeze has, 2-3 years tops, and they want to have a guy in the back with this, young offense that they have, and, see if he can handle the reins. If not, then they'll either go with Savage or someone else in a few years.
Okay. Yeah, because he was drafted by Minnesota, I want to say it was 3 years ago. He had the early season. He played one full season, and then he had a season-ending injury in the preseason, I think 2 years ago, and he sat out for 2 full years, I think. I think he was out for 2 full years, and then he just got traded to the NFC South. So I really hope for his sake. We haven't seen too much of him, but I think he has a lot of potential. Hopefully, once Breeze retires, which Breeze, as far as I'm concerned, could be 80 years old and still playing football. I mean, he's just a really robust athlete.
Yeah, and consistent too.
Right. So we'll see what happens with Teddy. Carolina didn't have anything interesting happening. They're already a pretty solid team. I don't think they really needed to make any major changes, and they didn't. Tampa Bay released Doug Martin. That was kind of a significant move. I don't know if it was a money issue or maybe just a locker room issue. Not really sure. I think his production maybe was a little bit down, so they might just be moving on. I honestly think Tampa Bay is going to enter into a full rebuild mode pretty soon. Minus Jameis Winston, I think they're entering into a full rebuild mode.
Well, if they're even going to keep him, or what's going to happen, because he showed a little bit of promise, and he's kind of slumped a little bit the last year or so, and then with his suspension, because he's out the first 4 games.
Right.
So they may give the Jameis Winston project another year or 2 tops and say, okay, we're really going into a rebuilding mode after him.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad, because I know we were kind of thinking a year or two ago that they were going to pick it up. And wasn't it last year we predicted them to go to the playoffs, and we were really disappointed to see how they just dropped the ball with the talent
because
they had?
they kept getting better, and then they just,
Stopped.
they just tanked. They really tanked last year, and now who knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So, Tampa Bay released Doug Martin, and then Atlanta, kind of surprisingly to me, they didn't really do anything. So I don't know what they're thinking. Maybe they think they're Super Bowl ready this year with what they have. I think Matt Ryan had a slightly down year last year, which down year for him is still 4,000 yards, but it was a little bit down from what it's been in the past. Maybe they're thinking he's going to bounce back and will be enough to put them over the edge. We'll see. Moving on to the NFC East. So starting with Dallas, a couple big ones. So Jason Witten retired after, I think, at least 10 solid years with them, 8 to 10 solid years with them.
Oh, longer than that.
Oh, was it longer? I thought
think it was around 14.
Okay. Was he drafted by them?
Yes.
Okay.
That I'm pretty confident on, yeah.
Okay.
Been the Cowboys whole life.
Okay. So, and they also released Des Bryant, which was big.
Yeah.
New York.
Was that a money issue? When you look into that, was that a money thing or a chemistry thing? Because I know he's had some.
From my impression is that it was a chemistry thing.
Okay, because I know he's had some jabs at Jason Garrett and Jerry Jones, but like he's still been kind of loyal, and I know he reminds me of kind of like a To, off the field, but he's one heck of a talent, and it's crazy to see them give him up when they also know that Witten retired, and who knows what we're going to get out of Ezekiel Elliott and Dak. So
right.
Maybe they didn't even care. Maybe they didn't even try to keep him because of that. So who knows?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, he's 29 years old. He still has, if he stays healthy, he's still got at least another 6 good years in him. I don't really understand that too much because I feel like the Cowboys are an interesting team that are kind of on the cusp of being really good. But to lose a receiver like that, their number one receiver like that is a pretty big loss. So they must have had some good internal reason for it. I don't know what the chatter was behind the scenes, but okay. So moving on to New York, New York Giants released Brandon Marshall, wide receiver. So that's significant. Philadelphia released Michael Kendricks. I know you had a little bit on him.
Yeah, I mean he went to the Browns, and it was a kind of a steal for the Browns to pick him up from the Eagles. And as people already saw, he got charged with insider trading. He knew of a merger that was about to happen privately, put stocks on it beforehand, which you're not allowed to do, and got busted from several years ago. So don't know what that looks like in terms of sentencing or how long he'll be out. But as we've seen with other players who've committed crimes, though his wasn't violent as other crimes have been committed in the NFL. But, maybe this is like a Michael Vick thing where we'll just see how people perceive how bad it is, and maybe they won't want to bring it back on. Or maybe even like a Tim Tebow thing where Tim Tebow didn't commit a crime except being a not very good quarterback.
Right, exactly.
But people didn't sign him because the circus of journalists and crowd that followed him, even though it wasn't his fault. Now with Michael Kendricks and others where they had done something illegal, who knows remember the Vikings released Adrian Peterson after that issue with his kid. So
right.
Even though again this wasn't a violent crime, the feds take it very seriously. They take the stock stuff very seriously. So even if he doesn't have to do jail time or anything, the stigma might be too large to where he may not get another chance. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll have to wait for another year or two.
Yeah, for sure. Washington Redskins signed Adrian Peterson. I'm not expecting his production to be all that great this year. He's getting old, and I think his career is going to be ending soon, but he's a big name, so we put him down. NFC West, this is big, so we'll spend a minute on this one. Los Angeles Rams, tons of moves in the offseason. So they traded Alec Ogletree to the Giants. They picked up Marcus Peters, cornerback from Kansas City. They traded for wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who's an up-and-coming star. Ndamukong Suh was a free agent pickup. They didn't release, but Sammy Watkins was a free agent. He departed. They traded Robert Quinn to Miami for draft picks, and they also acquired Aqib Talib from the Broncos. So their already decent secondary got better, a lot better. If you think about adding Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters all in one move, that's pretty significant. They already have a very strong front seven. I honestly think this was, in terms of a net change, this was a major net positive. They added a big wide receiver. Sammy Watkins wasn't hugely productive for them. I think Brandon Cooks will be. They lost a linebacker, but they added Ndamukong Suh, and they picked up 2 major cornerbacks. So they're going to be a really scary team. And I think a lot of this is just going to come down to how Jared Goff plays. I think their defense alone is enough to win them 10 games, and we'll see about their offense and how they play.
Yeah.
So moving on to Seattle. So again, Seattle, opposite end of the spectrum from the Rams. Seattle was gutted this offseason.
It's about time. It's about time.
Yeah, and I'll sort of gloat about this one because I'm a 49er fan. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment in our next segment. But so Seattle released Richard Sherman. They released cornerback Jeremy Lane. Michael Bennett was traded to Philadelphia. Cliff Averill, they released.
I didn't even know that.
About Cliff Averill?
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, they released Cliff Averill. Cam Chancellor retired because of a lingering neck injury. Jimmy Graham, free agency departure. Sheldon Richardson also left in free agency. And the only 2 pickups they had was Brandon Marshall and Sebastian Janikowski, a kicker. So they really, they got a receiver, and they lost, 7 big name players on their team. So I honestly don't really know what's going on over there. I know Richard Sherman mentioned some things after he moved to the 49ers. He mentioned some things about how Pete Carroll was his vibe was kind of getting a little bit old with the teammates, and I think that energy and fire that they had died off a little bit, and we can see that in their performance. Obviously, over the last couple of seasons, has been deteriorating. They were 9-7 last year, didn't even make the playoffs, so they're gutted. They still have a lot of talent on that team, though. There's still some really good players. Russell Wilson is a great quarterback, and he's going to play well, I think, no matter what. But I think we'll get to the predictions later, but I think Seattle is a team that, unfortunately for Seattle fans, and fortunately for Niner fans like myself, I think Seattle's going to be significantly worse this year. Moving on to Arizona. So Carson Palmer retired. That's a big one. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. I still can't get over that. The Honey Badger released, and then they picked up Sam Bradford, who I'm assuming is going to be their starter. They didn't have anybody else that they brought in that would fit that role. And Adrian Peterson was also released after 1 season with them. Lastly, San Francisco 49ers signed Richard Sherman. That was a big pickup. Team net improved, but we'll get to that later in terms of just major changes. Those are the big names. Lastly, for me, and then I'm going to give the reins over to Joseph for the last 3 divisions, but the AFC North, Baltimore released Jeremy Maclin, wide receiver. They picked up RG3, whose sad career is just sort of, he's relegated to the backup role now, which is
very sad.
Yeah.
He was a great talent, man.
He really was. He really was. But that's what happens when you overhype and just, I don't know.
I think it's psychological too. That injury. I mean, I watched part of the preseason game with Miami, game 3, I think it was, and he looks different. I watched him there in the pocket, and I'm like, that's RG3. There's no way. So he's different, and hopefully he can develop his pocket passing skills more. He was decent, but he did rely on his legs and was very athletic. So we'll just have to see. But Baltimore is an interesting situation because they have Joe Flacco, and he's much better as well. Speaking of hype, but
how old is he now? Do you know?
Flacco?
Yeah.
So all I know,
can look it up real quick. I think he's.
I think they came in the 2008 draft because Matt Ryan.
He's 33.
Matt Ryan and Flacco were in the same draft. I
Okay.
think that was 2007 or 8. So
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what they're. Baltimore's another team that is sort of in that is in that um, middle range purgatory where they can't be really bad, but they also just don't seem like they can make any moves to become good enough to win at a playoff level.
yeah.
So usually that means a rebuild is going to start happening in the next couple of years, but we'll see. So to wrap up, Pittsburgh didn't really have any. Oh, last thing, Baltimore signed Michael Crabtree. That was another big change.
Yeah.
Another person that left the Raiders for seemingly no reason. Pittsburgh, no major changes. They're already a really good stacked team. Cleveland traded away Deshaun Kaiser. They picked up Tyrod Taylor for a third-round draft pick, and then they also signed Carlos Hyde. So we'll see if Carlos Hyde can do anything with them. And then lastly, Cincinnati, another purgatory team, just nothing. They didn't do anything. You and I laugh about Cincinnati all the time. For the last couple of years, they went from being a solid, consistent 10-6, 11-5 team that made the playoffs every single year to just, I don't know, they're just sort of a sad sack now. Like, I don't really know what to think about them. I think they need to make some major changes there. And I don't know if a future with Andy Dalton is what they should stick with. I think they might need to maybe look into drafting a quarterback next year because they're not going to be able to afford to keep paying him a ton of money and then not be building around him.
Yeah, and I feel bad for AJ Green because AJ Green and Julio Jones were also in the same draft. I think 6 to 8 years ago. And so it was always fun for me to see. I watched them in college a little bit, Alabama and Georgia, and seeing how they would develop and how they've both been, top 5 wide receivers each year since they started. And he's been loyal to them. He hasn't really expressed. He's never had like a controversy as far as my memory goes. He's been loyal. Hasn't spoken out. He's not a drama guy. So if I'm AJ Green, though, I feel like just got to give the Bengals one more year, and after that, got to go to a playoff team. Go play with Drew Brees for his last year, or go to the Vikings for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And if you're the Bengals, then be willing to give him up while he still has trade value. So, for me, when I think about the Bengals, I've always had a soft spot for them, but it's mostly been because of AJ Green. So hopefully something good can happen with him because he has been kind of a quiet but yet top 5 wide receiver his whole career.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope good things for him. Okay, so next we're up AFC South.
Yeah, so this one's interesting. This one's of the 3 that I had to do. This one's the shortest one, and I can explain why a bit here in a minute. So Colts and Texans really have anything that picked up for me. The Titans, they terminated Matt Castle and DeMarco Murray. So I Matt Castle, remember from, what was that, 2008? He filled in for when Tom Brady went down, took him to the playoffs.
How can anyone forget?
Yeah, yeah. And he just kind of hovered around the league since then. Hasn't really been much. DeMarco Murray, though, that one's sad because he only played, I know he came into the league a little bit later, a little older when he was playing. But, he had that breakout season in Dallas and another solid season there and had a solid season or two, better than average with the Titans. But they dropped him, and then he retired after that. And then the Titans also. So here's a big one. So Jack Conklin, he's their tackle. He was activated. He was on the unable to perform list.
Okay.
So now he's activated, which is big. He was drafted a couple years ago at Michigan State. Been a big tackle for them, protecting Marcus Mariota. So that's big news. Jags, only one thing. Marquise Lee was placed on the injury list reserve. So I know that the defense carried the Jags last year to that record, and we'll see how they are this year and how Blake Bortles, if he's consistent or not. But losing a receiver is still big news for them. So I think the AFC South didn't really have much activity this year. It seems like they had the least activity of all 8 divisions. Is because they're just mostly kind of average. They all have the potential. They're all basically 8-8 teams plus or minus 2 wins. Yes, the Jags have a great defense, but Bortles is inconsistent. they aren't super great on offense, kind of hit and miss. And their defense can get them to 10 wins, but how much more can they consistently get them after that? The Colts have been pretty bad when Andrew Luck is out. Even when he's in there, he has to basically be his very best for them to get to 9-10 wins. So who knows what they'll have this year. I don't even know if I can name that many other Colts on the team. Titans, yeah, they have Mariota, but don't have a very good running back. They hover around 9-7, and then same thing with the Texans. Though I think the Texans, they'll probably have the most promise. I have a lot of faith in Deshaun Watson this year, and I'm hoping that they do well. But I feel like that, I think all of the teams know in that division that they're all hovering around 6-10 to 10-6 as the range. So they probably don't feel like they need to make big moves, go for that franchise player, actually they all have their quarterback. They'll have their quarterback for the next 3 to 5 years. So they probably didn't feel like they need to make big moves to change that division up.
Real quick on that, we had talked about this a little earlier this week, that it seemed like, with the exception of the Jaguars, that most of these teams seem to kind of be playing to win the division rather than to win a Super Bowl.
Team-wise, yes.
Do we think that any of these teams are good enough as they are right now to win a Super Bowl?
No, I don't even think any of them are good enough to get to the Super Bowl. Jacksonville is the only one you could think of, but I mean, the Steelers are still loaded offensively and okay on defense, and even though the Pats lost some players and stuff, they're still the Patriots, So until Tom Brady retires, or Roethlisberger and or Le'Veon Bell and or Antonio Brown get injured, then I think the best potential the Jags have is the AFC Championship.
Okay, I think I agree with that.
All right, AFC East. So more news here. So Patriots, they released Martellus Bennett and went on to retire afterwards. So this next one I thought was pretty big. So they traded Brandon Cooks to the Rams and a 4th rounder, and they got back in returns a 1st round pick and a 6th round pick, which I think is pretty fair. So I don't know why they got rid of Brandon Cooks. I feel like he had good chemistry with the Patriots last year, but this is a huge pickup for the Rams because even though they lost a 1st rounder, they did get a 4th round in return, and Brandon Cooks is a piece right now that they can use. So with Todd Gurley and Goff and the rest of their offense and that defense that they have, and the pickups that you mentioned, man, they're loaded. So I think that the Rams slightly won on this, but the Patriots did not lose. I think it's fair getting that 1st rounder. You know how good the Patriots are with drafts, and who knows, they might have realized that this is Brady's last year and they want to use that for a quarterback next year.
So real quick on that, I feel like, so you said that they traded Brandon Cooks and a 4th round for a 1st and a 6th?
Yes.
Okay. Brandon Cooks was only with the Patriots for what, 1 or 2 years?
It was 1 year.
Yeah.
1 year.
See, they get a tremendous value from somebody, and then they trade him away while they're still hot. They get great picks for them. In this case, a number 1 pick. And then, of course, New England's going to trade down, right? They're going to trade down out of the 1st round and get tons of late draft value.
Well, unless they're going to get a quarterback. That's the thing. I don't know if this is because we've seen this the last couple of years where they've kind of traded down their high picks. But what if this is the year they don't trade down, finally get that quarterback to replace Brady?
You think that strategy only works because Brady was there?
Well, not necessarily that it worked because Brady was there, but that they just the writing on the wall has been getting bigger and bigger, I'll say. So the pressure to trade down has been getting smaller and smaller. Or I guess the pressure to keep their higher pick is getting higher and higher. I can't see Brady.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I can't see Brady playing after next year. This year and next year at the most, but I see them not necessarily going into a rebuilding phase. I think no matter, as long as they keep Belichick and some of their team, they'll always be at least an 8-win team. But if they can plug in someone else for Brady and get another offensive talent, provided Gronk is still healthy, then they can still be a 9-10 win team. So they might be looking to replace him. Who knows? He's not going to get traded though. Brady's not going to play for anyone else. I know that. Next up, Jets. Oh, didn't really see anything for the Bills. So the Jets, they traded Teddy Bridgewater to the Saints along with a 6th rounder in return for a 3rd round pick. Not bad, pretty fair on both sides. We'll see if the Jets, they're just abysmal and they're going to be abysmal. So I don't know how much a 3rd round pick is going to do for them, but it's definitely better for the Saints if Bridgewater can be their future quarterback. So we'll see. And then Dolphins, I'll talk about more of the Dolphins in a minute when we get to our team segments, but did have a lot of stuff. So they released Ndamukong Suh and Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas went on to retire, actually. So Suh had a huge contract. I don't know how much of that we absorbed. I don't know if we got rid of the whole thing or if we still owe him money, but that was a huge contract, and he underperformed for us. He started being kind of just not have very good chemistry in the locker room, it sounded like, and I wasn't a big fan of him. So I'm kind of glad he's gone, but I realize that he's a talent that left. This next one, well, it kind of takes. We traded Jarvis Landry to the Browns in return for a 4th round pick this year and a 7th round pick next year. Well, first of all, 7th round picks, they're basically pity picks. This really just comes down to Jarvis Landry, who we franchise tagged for a 4th round pick. So the Dolphins completely lost on that. They didn't want to franchise tag him again. Jarvis Landry demanded way too much money, though he is a good talent, but demanded too much. And I feel like we had to get rid of him, but we definitely lost on that. We got screwed on that trade. So yeah, I'll say more when we get to our segment, but not looking good for the Dolphins. AFC West. So Broncos, they signed Case Keenum. That's big news. He'll definitely be their starter. As we heard, Simeon's gone. They waived Paxton Lynch. There goes their chance for Super Bowl, man.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so, I know that the Browns have kind of the more recent quarterback issues. But then when you look at the last 20 years, Broncos have had some issues. Dolphins have been abysmal with quarterbacks. So it's just kind of sad to see the Broncos here having another, quarterback issue with who they draft. So yeah, Lynch is gone and Simeon. And then Case Keenum, who's not bad, but he's not great. So we'll see what the Broncos have. This next one was weird. Traded Aqib Talib for a 5th round pick. So talent-wise, he's worth more than that. So who picked him up? The Rams picked him up, right?
Which one?
Who picked up Aqib Talib? The Rams.
Yeah, it was the Rams. The Rams picked up, yeah.
Yeah, so this was definitely chemistry. I focus on the Broncos the last 4 to 6 years a little bit on the side, and he's definitely
not just on the side. Not just on the side. Be honest. Be honest with our viewers. You've been they're your second team. They're your second team.
Well, I'm kind of a player guy now, so like the Packers are now a second team and stuff. So Dolphins will always be my team to my heart, but I do like following players. And yes, when Peyton Manning went from the Colts were my second team, and then when Peyton Manning left, yeah. But still, Aqib Talib is much more talented than a 5th round pick, but his chemistry and attitude was getting pretty bad, abysmal. In Denver, so I know that they got rid of him. So if he can just behave, he would have been a good fit for the Patriots. But if he can not act up, then that's another huge pick for the Rams, and he's definitely worth more than 5th rounder.
There's not many players that think it's worthwhile to pick fights in the preseason.
Yeah,
not even just preseason, but in practice.
Yeah, so hopefully you can focus that energy.
Yeah.
More constructive. Chargers, they signed Mike Pouncey. Get to that in a minute with the Dolphins releasing him, but Chargers signed Mike Pouncey. That's about it. Chiefs, they released Darrelle Revis. Going to be in the Hall of Fame in a few years, I think 5 years from now, because he retired. That's big news, not just the Chiefs wise, but NFL wise, that one of the best cornerbacks retired. And then they signed Sammy Watkins. Raiders, they signed Doug Martin. So I'd be curious how they use him with beast mode. or AKA Marshawn Lynch.
Maybe we should agree to not use that name on this channel.
Well, we can just call him Skittles.
That's worse. No, because I feel like he kind of ascribed a new identity when he moved to the Raiders. So the Skittles and the Beast Mode and the Rumble and all that. I don't know, that the 12th man, and the NFL Nation needs to leave that all behind.
I think you don't shelter your hatred for the Seahawks against our fans, listeners.
I guess I have to balance that out, don't I?
Yeah. This next one, okay, this is huge. So they traded, and I looked up some of the details today. They traded Khalil Mack and a second-round pick and a conditional fifth-round pick to the Bears for 2 first-round picks, one for 2019, the next one 2020, a third-round pick in 2020, and a sixth-round pick in 2019. So essentially, if you throw in the conditional and you average things out, essentially it narrows down to Mack for 2 first-round picks.
Right.
And talent-wise, I think that's fair. But results, impact-wise, it's pretty skewed. I mean, there's pros and cons on both sides. The Bears are clearly wanting to win now. This is a huge pickup for them talent-wise, but oh my goodness, does he cost a lot? I think his contract is 6 years, $141 million. He's averaging $23.5 million a year, which is, I mean, that was beating what quarterbacks were making 5-6 years ago, and that's up there with the quarterback range. I think only 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks make more than him now, and he's now the highest defensive player paid of all time. So they better win soon. That's a lot of money, and it's going to hurt them from getting other offensive talent they need to support Mitch Trubisky. But the Raiders, though, it's interesting. You know, you have Derek Carr, and you have an okay defense and above average offense, and you hover, I think, around 9-7, 10-6, possibly, maybe 8-8 with some luck. But they lose a big talent, but they don't have to pay him now all this money. So the only way I see the Raiders salvaging this situation is if they use the money that they saved from paying Mack to actually go out and do something. If they don't and they just sit on this, then sorry, Raider fans, I think you're about to enter into another stage that you had, during those mid 2000 years where you were pretty bad. So that's
But how are they going to replace Mack? That's the thing. There's nobody out there that can play that kind of role that's available.
No, you're right. Not only do they have to replace Mack, but they also have to try to be advantageous with the money they save to get other players. So if they do neither, they're not only screwed, but they're dumb and they're lazy. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope they do better because I like Derek Carr and want to see them succeed. I know they were really bad for many years, and so seeing them come out of that is exciting. But and Khalil Mack was really fun to watch. He's going to be a super special talent. But so it is sad to see that. But it's like, come on, Oakland, figure out what you guys want. So I know Gruden's in there now. Hopefully he's a mastermind. But I don't know what they're going to do.
That's a big question mark. They're if not the most, they might be the team with the most questions going into this season. So we'll see what happens. So that wraps up the AFC West. So that's it, right? We've covered all the divisions.
Yep.
All right. So for our viewers that are just joining us, this is the Practice Squad podcast where we make even the replacement refs look like pros. We just covered segment 1, which was just kind of talking casually about the major changes in the offseason for each team. Now is our time to move into our second segment where we get a couple of special minutes here to talk about our favorite teams. For myself, the 49ers, and for my co-host Joseph, Miami Dolphins. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the changes for the 49ers. So in the draft this year, the major pickup was Mike McGlinchey, first round, ninth pick overall. He's a right tackle. He kind of filled the void that Trent Brown left when he left in the offseason. as with any offensive line first round pick, usually those are fairly safe, but oftentimes an injury or something might happen that makes it not worth the pick, right? So that can always happen. But I think in this case, in terms of what we've seen in the preseason, that he's going to be a pretty solid player. He might not be a superstar level player. He might not turn into a Joe Staley, but he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a solid guy that'll hold that right side. Free agency pickups, like I said earlier, Richard Sherman, that's a huge one. If he can stay healthy, if he can even be 80% of what he was in Seattle, he's going to totally turn around our secondary. I mean, the Niners secondary for the last 3 years has been more than abysmal. And even in the Jim Harbaugh days, it wasn't the best part of the defense. The best part of the defense was the D-line, the pass rush, the linebackers. But the secondary is getting better with him. Next, Alfred Morris. So he was kind of a late pickup. I think this was about a week ago. They picked him up, and I think this was partly because of some injury problems in the preseason for some of the running backs. In fact, yesterday the news came out officially that Jerick McKinnon, the guy that they signed in the offseason for big money as a free agent, tore his ACL. So he's going to be out for the season. He was supposed to be the number one back. I think Alfred Morris is eventually going to take that role because the other two guys that we got, Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert, are just not number one back kind of players. They're not built that way. We lost Carlos Hyde in free agency. That's probably the biggest name. He just didn't fit with Shanahan's system, and there were some attitude problems, and his production was way down from before. So he's gone. In terms of trades, so we traded center Daniel Kilgore to Miami for some undisclosed compensation, and then also traded Eli Harold, a linebacker, to Detroit for a draft pick. As far as I'm concerned, Daniel Kilgore was an okay center. That's not a huge loss to me. And Eli Harold, good riddance. I mean, he was, in the words of Larry Krueger from KNBR 680, he was a total zero. He added nothing. He added nothing to the team. So best of luck for him at Detroit. I have nothing against him personally, but he's no loss in terms of performance here. I think draft picks will easily fill that void. So as far as generally looking at the year for the Niners, I think the biggest positives are the changes in the O-line. I think we're actually going to be able to protect Garoppolo. Having Garoppolo, the new quarterback who played 5 games last season, I think he's going to be solid. I'm just hoping that he'll play as good as he did last year and maybe improve a little bit. I just don't want to see him regress. That would be really sad and devastating. It might be the number one most devastating thing for Niner fans if we saw him regress. Yeah. Wide receivers, that position has depth now, and we actually have some solid players there. I'm excited about that position. I'm excited to see what they can do. Garoppolo just makes guys around him better, and I think that the guys that we have, Garcon, Trent Taylor, the new draft picks, Dante Pettis, Richie James, Marquise Goodwin had a breakout year last year, so I think we got some great players there that can go far. There's nobody on this team. I wouldn't say that the Niners have a true number one receiver. We don't have a Antonio Brown or who's the guy from the Cincinnati Bengals? I'm going blank.
AJ Green.
AJ Green. We don't have an AJ Green. So we have what we have, and I think there's some solid number twos and a lot of depth there. And then I think our secondary got better. There's still room to improve. I'm excited to pick up Sherman. We'll see what happens with him. My biggest concerns going into this season are durability and injuries. We've just had the injury bug the last few years, and I want to see that change. But I know that there's somewhat of a luck of the draw there, and so I just hope that this year can be better. We've suffered from a lot of penalties, too. Penalties have been a major issue the last many seasons. And part of that has to do with the fact that the team's young, the team is inexperienced, and it gets better with age generally. But I just want to see that get better, and I hope that it will. Right now, we don't have a pass rush. Let's just be honest, 49er fans that are listening right now, we don't have a pass rush. we need one, and we don't have one. I don't know what Shanahan and John Lynch were thinking in the draft. We picked up one defensive end, I think, in the 4th round. His name was Kentavious Street. I don't even know if he's going to play this year. I mean, we don't have anybody at that position to make a difference. And I know we tried to go after Khalil Mack, but it ended up just being too expensive. And I also heard that the Raiders didn't want to trade to the Niners, partly, I think, because they're playing them this year, which is a little odd to think of that just for 1 year. But I'm a little concerned about linebacker depth. I think Reuben Foster is going to play well after his 2-game suspension. But then again, I'm also a little worried about him because he's shown some durability issues and he also has some off-the-field issues. I'm hoping that Fred Warner, the 3rd-round linebacker, 3rd-round draft pick linebacker this year, is going to play well. He's going to be a starter. So hopefully throwing him into that role right away is okay for him and that he can grow there. And then I'm also concerned about linebacker because we have 3 linebackers. Our number 1, the guy that was supposed to be number 1, McKinnon, is out with an ACL. So when that happens before the season even starts, you don't even know what's going to happen there. I imagine they're probably going to have to pick up a 4th guy at some point in the season. So just generally, in terms of record, I've really studied over the teams that they're playing this year, and I think to be reasonable, which is hard to do because I'm a biased fan, right? But to be reasonable, I have to say that they're going to go 8-8 this year. They were 6-10 last year. I think they're plenty good enough to improve 2 games. None of this 13-3 because we got Jimmy G. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been promoting it a little bit. I've been promoting a 10-6 because of Jimmy G. But
okay, well, 13-3 has the rhyme, so people have been going with that. But it gets more unreasonable the higher the number that goes. So I think 8-8 is reasonable for them. I think their range, they could go as well as 10. I think they could go as high as 10. I think they could also sink as low as 6. I don't think they're going to be worse than 6. So I found a middle ground at 8-8. I'd be happy with 8-8 with the team that they have right now. So that's it for the 49ers. I mean, throw out your thoughts in chat. If you think that the Niners are a better team than 8-8, Vegas has them at 8.5 wins for the season. Throw out what you think. Let us know. I'm hopeful it's more. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. 8-8's not going to be enough to make the playoffs. Even 10-6 in the NFC, which is a stacked conference this year. We're going to talk about that for sure. But 10-6 might not even be enough. So we'll see. I think next year they're a playoff team, not this year. So what happened with Miami this year?
Well, since I'm a reasonable Miami fan, I have to throw them under the bus. Like, man, they were a net loss, definitely. I mean, Tannehill's healthy, which is good, but yeah. So obviously, earlier released Ndamukong Suh and Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas was really disappointing. He really only had, not to go back to Peyton Manning, but this helps the argument for how certain quarterbacks make players or wide receivers, and how wide receivers make certain quarterbacks. And Julius Thomas had one really good and then another solid year in Denver, and has been nothing ever since. So he retired early, and we picked up one of our draft picks, Mike Gesicki. He's a tight end. We signed him, 2nd-round pick. So hopefully he can be, at least twice as more productive than Julius Thomas. But we also released Mike Pouncey. He was a very good center. Some good news though. We did acquire Robert Quinn, the Rams, and I watched him in part of the preseason game against Baltimore, and he looked good. He was out there. He looked really good. Lost Sue, lost Jarvis Landry. We picked up Danny Amendola, which is good news. Hopefully he can be a solid slot wide receiver like he has been for the Rams and Patriots before. We signed Frank Gore. Do you know that?
No, I didn't. I didn't know he left the Colts.
Yeah, we signed Gore.
Wow.
He's actually, him and Kenyon Drake are going to be the 2 guys in the backfield. We released Jeremy Langford, which isn't the biggest of news, but for me it is personally. He played at Michigan State. right after Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell had his amazing breakout year at Michigan State, and then right after Le'Veon left, Langford stepped up for 2 years and was actually just as good as Le'Veon Bell was. So just personally, it was kind of, I saw that they had signed him, but then they released him shortly after. It was kind of sad to see him leave, and who knows what his NFL career will be. Yeah, back to Tannehill. He better have an amazing year. If he does not have an absolutely amazing year, then I think the following options must happen. The Dolphins need to get rid of him. I think he has a lot of guaranteed money, so we may end up owing him money for the next couple of years. Get rid of him, or he needs to go back to his good old early days in Texas A&M, and he needs to become a wide receiver. That's where he started in college before he transitioned to quarterback, and he needs to go back to that if he doesn't have a good year and does much, because we're paying him a lot of money, and he's been mediocre to average. He's shown potential, but he's inconsistent, and he might serve better on this Dolphin team as a wide receiver if he can't put up for a quarterback. So yeah, I think we have a net loss. Miami is they're the classic 8-8 team, right? I mean, we've talked about this for a few years now. That it's just like every year, it's like Miami 7-9 to 9-7, and they've finished within that range. I remember, wasn't that freshman year? I think it was freshman year in college, and that's dating us for ourselves right now. That's when I think Miami won the division at 10-6.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I think we made the playoffs a couple years ago, but Tannehill was injured, and Matt Moore played that game. But yeah, Miami's just been basically around an 8-8 team now for too many years, and it's really sad to see. So I think they're going to go 7-9. I like our wide receiver core. I know that we lost Jarvis Landry, but I'm looking at this. Nothing special, like you said. We don't have a top talent like Julio Jones or Antonio Brown, but Devontae Parker, Danny Amendola, and Kenny Stills. That's above average. Not top 10, but that's above average. Running back situation, though, I'm skeptical. I mean, Kenyon Drake, nothing special. Frank Gore, I wish this was 2008, 2009 Frank Gore, but it's not. I think he's 35 now. So, I mean, if running backs hit a brick wall at 30, just imagine the wall they hit at 35. So, not skeptical of our running back issues. I'm really excited to see Cameron Wake and Robert Quinn on the ends for defense, but I don't think it's going to be enough to muster up 10 wins. So I'm going to go with 7-9 unless Tannehill just goes berserk, and then we may go 9-7. So.
Okay, so our next segment is our sleepers and flops segment. So this is a segment where we go through and we each of us are going to select a sleeper team, which is a team that we think is quiet now, but is going to have a breakout season or a really good season unexpectedly this year. And then a flop is a team that everybody is expecting to do well, but we think is actually going to not do well. So I'm going to give it to you first, Joseph. We'll start with the NFC. Who's your NFC sleeper this year?
NFC sleeper this year is the Niners.
The Niners. There we go. I like it. I like it already.
Yeah. I'm feeling a 10-6, maybe an 11-5, man. But we'll stick with I'll say 10-6. I think I unfortunately I agree with you that because how stacked the NFC is, it may not be playoff worthy, but 10-6 is still respectable, especially after what you guys had to deal with the last couple of years. So I think the Niners are the sleeper in the NFC.
Okay. What about your NFC flop?
Falcons.
And okay.
And you know how much it hurts for me to say that.
I know.
Yeah, I mean they'll probably still win 9, maybe even 10 games, but I think that's an underachievement for them. We've seen how good Matt Ryan and Julio Jones can be and should be. So even if they win 9 games, I see that as a flop for them. Disappointing. So.
Okay.
How about you?
So I guess I can do NFC and then we'll jump to AFC. So my NFC sleeper this year, as much of a homer as I am, I went with Chicago Bears.
Ah, okay. Was that before or after the trade?
It was actually, I was thinking about it before, and then the trade kind of sealed the deal for me. So
Okay.
last year they were 5-11. I think they've Mitch Trubisky's in his second year. I think he's going to be better. I don't think he's going to be anything super great, but he'll be an impact player. They picked up Khalil Mack. They have an already fairly strong front seven. They're just a team I feel like that's just slowly getting better and better and better over time. They signed Allen Robinson, so they have some weapons to play with. I don't think they're necessarily a playoff team just because of the division they're in. But I think that they could very likely turn a 5-11 a record down to maybe a 9-7.
Yeah, that's turnaround.
So I think a four win swing is definitely worthy of a sleeper. My
Yeah.
NFC flop is Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
So,
but how much? I mean,
how much worse can they get? Is that what you're going to ask?
So that is true, but that is not what I was going to ask. What I was going to ask is, not that I disagree necessarily. It's just that with how much they got gutted after the gutting, how much were they expected to do well anyways? So I guess.
So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know what the Vegas record is. I think my thing with Seattle is that they were 9-7 last year, and I think that they might be a 2-win swing. I mean, they could be a 7-9. I'm hard pressed to say that they'd be as bad as 6-10. But I think for me, a 2-win swing in their case is significant because I think that they underperformed last year.
Okay, so it's almost like taking into account last year's performance with this year's flop. Well, if I had to push back a little bit, I will a little bit. Do you have a secondary? You have a secondary flop from the NFC?
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay.
Seattle's. I'm pretty stuck with Seattle on this one.
Okay. I guess we'll go to the AFC.
Yeah. So on AFC, who's your AFC sleeper this year?
Where'd they go?
They're sleeping.
I know.
You need to wake them
up. Where did?
While you're finding your notes, do you want me to go ahead? I can give my AFC sleeper. So my AFC sleeper is the Cleveland Browns. By no means are they going to be a playoff team. I mean, they were 0-16 last year. Let's be real. They're still bad. But they're a team that I think has been slowly putting together some decent pieces, and I think coaching holds them back for sure. I think that roster holds them back as well. But I think they're a team that at some point is going to solidify into a team that actually is formidable. We've seen it in recent years. I forget, was it 2012 that they were? Was it 7-9 or 8-8 that year that the AFC North was really stacked?
Yeah, it was around there because I remember we were living at the time.
Yeah. I think they can return to that without too much change. Honestly, I think that they're a team that with just a couple more pieces and some luck can turn
Andrew Luck.
Well, if Andrew Luck was on that team, I'm sure that they would definitely be the sleeper of the year for anybody. But I think Tyrod Taylor is quarterbacking for them this year, so we'll see how he can do. He led the Bills to was it a 9-7 or a 10-6 year last year? So, and then my AFC flop of the year is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh yeah,
they were 10-6 last year, division winners. They lost Marcus Peters, they lost Alex Smith. Their defense got essentially gutted. I think that they're maybe an 8-8 team this year, possibly 7-9. I used to have confidence week to week in making a pick for them, but I just don't think so anymore. I think they're on the decline, unfortunately. We'll see what they can do with Patrick Mahomes, if he can have a decent season, but I'm not thinking that he's going to be able to keep them afloat the way that Alex Smith did.
Yeah. No, it's speak to the Brown situation really quick. They need to stick with a quarterback. If you look at their quarterback history the last 5 to 6 years, they give guys 1 year, and then that's it. I know there's been some fiascos, Johnny Manziel and so forth off the field, but they basically have just been giving their guys 1-2 years. And the same thing goes, I think, with their GM. I think they've been getting rid of GMs every few years as well.
Yeah,
so they're so desperate that they make rash decisions, which then kind of just fuels the fire of how bad they are without solidifying a team.
Yeah.
So I found my notes. So my AFC flop is the Titans.
Okay.
Mariota is showing promise, definitely solid talent, but I think they're just going to stay. They're not going to really break out of the 8-8, 9-7 team. Was kind of hoping to see that last year. Certainly not going to see it this year with DeMarco Murray gone, and they didn't really make any big splashes in the offseason. And we don't know if Mariota is capped right now with his performance. So unless he has a significant improvement, 15, 20, 25%, then I think they're going to be a little disappointing in there. And then actually, my sleeper is in the same division, the Texans.
Okay.
I know that there has been hype with Deshaun Watson, so it's maybe a pseudo sleeper, but still coming off an injury. J.J. Watt was injured; he's coming back, and I guess I'm just taking the benefit of the doubt and putting some faith in this Texans team that Watt's going to perform well and Deshaun Watson's going to perform well, and I think they're going to be possibly a playoff team. And
do you remember which week he got injured last year?
I think it was week 5 to 6 around there.
So pretty early.
It was pretty early. I think at best around halfway around the season. But no, so yeah, he he didn't start the season. I think someone else started the season. The person got taken out. I remember he had like 4 or 5 games, and 3 of them were just phenomenal. And I remember one of them. You remember I was at the airport, and it was when they played Seattle.
Yeah, the Seattle game. I remember that game.
And then Seattle came back. Oh, it was awful. But
yeah, didn't he have like 400 passing yards in that game or something?
Yeah, and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
it was amazing. And he had like a potentially game-winning drive towards the end, and of course Russell Wilson did his, what he did. But yeah, so I think the Texans, I see them easily 9-7, and unless Andrew Luck goes off, then I think the Texans are going to win the division.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, you think they can even beat out Jacksonville?
Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is playoffs. If they beat out
a wild card spot
for a wild card, yeah.
Okay. All right. So our next segment, and this will be fairly brief. We just wanted to cover the major rule changes in the offseason. The NFL officials and team officials get together each year and they debate on various potential changes to the rules. And this year they made some changes to the kickoff rules, also with helmet-to-helmet contact. There was nothing that was huge. The kickoff rule change was interesting. It's worth reading up on. We're not going to go over it in the show today. But one other thing that they do every year is they also publish a list of what they call points of emphasis. And I just have a problem with this idea. But before I tell you what the problem is, let me read their point of emphasis of protection of quarterbacks. So they say, the committee reviewed hits on quarterbacks inside and outside the pocket. In some instances, the defender used all or part of his body weight to land on the quarterback immediately after the ball was thrown. These actions put the quarterback at risk for injury. The officiating department will emphasize that the defender is responsible for avoiding landing on the quarterback when taking him to the ground. So, before I get to my general problem, let's focus in for just a second on how radical this is. I don't think people understand how big of a deal this is. It's not a rule change, but imagine now defensive ends that are coming in to sack the quarterback that are already being penalized, I think, more than they should be for hitting the quarterback, are now basically going to be penalized every single time that they land on the quarterback. Okay? I can't. I mean, how many sacks are there where a guy doesn't land on the quarterback? That's the natural. From a physics perspective, that's just the natural move that a player makes when they're attacking a quarterback head on, is to just land on them. You tackle them and you land on them. So to me, this means that now not only are they going to be watching, crown to the chest, crown to the crown, they're going to be watching late hits. They're going to be watching, if even one molecule of your helmet touches the quarterback, you're going to get a 15-yard penalty and one mark towards a suspension. I mean, and then now they're not even going to be able to land on top of the quarterback. I just don't. What do you think about this, Joseph? I think this is just another way that the defensive end position is getting to be ridiculous. It's just the quarterbacks need to be protected, but it's gotten to the point where, like, what is the defensive line supposed to do?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's two sides. I think that there's not enough calls on defensive ends at times where it's like the really late hits or like clearly obviously dangerous and or to the legs. But I also simultaneously agree with your comments about getting called on too much. Right? They're both the case. Like the ones that get missed don't get called, but then the ones that do get called, some of them are like, really? Should he have been called on for that? So the physics part of this is so true. I mean, you're going full speed. The game is so fast. You're trying to break up the ball, cause a fumble, hit it, take him down, sack the quarterback, and then you hit him. You're already in his like line of direction, right? I mean, you're aiming probably for his waist, chest area, and you're falling with him. Are you supposed to mid-air kind of roll your body off of him and land on your back?
Exactly, yeah. How are you supposed to tackle does it have to become an arm tackle then, where you're basically you charge them with your body weight, but then you immediately turn on a dime shift by grabbing them only with your arm and taking them down so that they're not underneath your body when they hit the ground? I mean,
and what about forced fumbles? I've seen guys who, while they're tackling a guy, they're going for the ball and they cause a forced fumble or a strip.
Right.
Like, you can't do that now, really.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy. And then my general point with the points of emphasis is I just don't think there should be points of emphasis. I think that every rule is a rule for a reason. And there might be bad reasons for rules, but the rule book is the rule book, right? And if we've agreed on a rule book, every rule should be weighted equally. I don't feel like the idea of each year we have to come up with 3 or 4 things that refs have to focus on and penalize more because we're worried about it. Well, if you're worried about it, then make it a rule, right? Don't make this be something that the refs are now focusing in more on, because whenever that happens, inevitably there's going to be things that they focus less on, and the things that they focus less on can oftentimes have just as much of an impact on the result of the game as the things that they're focusing more on. So I just don't believe in this idea of points of emphasis. I'd like to see it go away, and if they really feel like it's a major problem, then they need to make it a rule. The only counter to this I can think of, practically speaking, is that the points of emphasis might be a diplomatic thing, in the sense that they might not be able to, there might be not enough agreement amongst the officials that should be actually become a rule, and so they make it a point of emphasis to sort of appease both sides, the side that wants it and doesn't want it. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, that I don't really, as a fan, I don't care about the diplomacy. I don't care about what goes behind that table. I care about a quality game and a consistent game, a fair game that doesn't involve refs over focusing on certain penalties and under focusing on others.
Yeah. Oh, we'll definitely, I know later on in the season, we'll definitely get to the segments on the lack of penalty calls. But yeah, for this case, they are being a little too stringent.
Yeah, so we got a comment in chat saying the way to prevent the cheap hits and rightly cause the right kind of caution in the defensive players is to throw players out of the game for flagrant infractions. 15 yards means nothing. Loss of a player means a ton. I completely agree with that. I mean, I think like hits that are extremely late, I think those might warrant just suspension for the rest of the game, to get thrown out of the game. I don't want to see that applied in the case of just, accidental helmet-to-helmet contact or sort of incidental contact that oftentimes gets called as if it's a flagrant foul. I think Joseph, you and I know the difference between a play where a guy is going out of his way to mow down the quarterback inappropriately and a play where the guy is trying to get a sack and just accidentally gets his head in the wrong place or tackles him wrong.
Yeah.
We know the difference between those two things. So I'd be all for the flagrant being a suspension and the non-flagrant just being a penalty within the game.
Well, you could also have a tier system to kind of weed out, because there is a lot of, gray area situations. You could have a tier system where it's, first incident is you're out 1 to 2 plays or whatever, or a whole possession. And then if it happens again, you're out for a half. And then after that, it's a game, or
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. So to where it kind of, it's a stiff enough penalty to begin with, to where even if it was incidental, like, yeah, you're upset, it's not good, but it's in the gray area, and then you focus to not do it again. But if you're a multiple offender, then it's not incidental, and you should get a good penalty for it. So a game or so.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So up next is segment number 5, our special discussion segment. We're going to be talking about.
I thought we were going to segment 6.
So we've got our special segment on the Jerry Jones quote. Did you want to skip that one?
Yeah, that's what I texted you on.
Okay.
Or yeah, I think let's skip
okay.
all 5 for next week.
All right, so we'll save that for next week. We got some interesting talk on ESPN posted a list of their top 100 players going into the season, and we wanted to talk about that. We'll save that for next week because we're kind of running a little bit over time, and we also ran into some technical issues. We also wanted to talk about a quote from Jerry Jones on regular versus preseason injury rates that was also kind of controversial. So we'll save that for next week as well, or a future week possibly. I think next week's going to be packed because we got our first full week of games, which is super exciting. So we'll go ahead and skip that, save that for next week. So we're moving into segment 6, our season.
But definitely, I just want to add, definitely tune in though, because that's going to be a good 20 to 30 minute discussion with a lot of interesting points on those 2 specialty segments. So looking forward to doing that soon.
For sure. So segment 6 is our season playoff predictions. So we're going to be first doing our game-by-game predictions for this upcoming week. So we've got 16 full games this week. First game of the NFL regular season 2018 is this Thursday night. I am pumped. It is going to be the Falcons at the Eagles. The rest of the games are either going to be Sunday or 2 games on Monday night. So let's go ahead and just we'll go through each game and then we'll just each say who we think is going to win. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So for the first game, Falcons at Eagles, I picked the Eagles to win that game.
Same here. No comments.
Yep. Bills at Ravens, I picked the Ravens to win at home.
Same here.
Okay. Bengals at the Colts. I picked the Colts for this one.
Colts.
I think that's a safe one for a home win there.
And just to give you a heads up, I might have like a 2-second delay because the list I printed out is in different order. So I got to.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Find where it is.
No worries. Steelers at Browns. It's not going to be the Browns' first win of the season.
Well, who knows, man? I was kidding. No, you're right.
Yeah, Steelers scooped that one up. Titans at Dolphins. I think we might diverge on this one. I'm picking the Titans.
Yeah, I'm going with the home team,
okay.
My team.
All right.
Hopefully.
49ers at Vikings. I know I'm a homer, but I'm picking the Vikings on this one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the top teams in the NFC, and they're at home. So
yeah, they're stacked. They're at home. First game of the season. The only way the Niners can win this game is if they catch Kirk Cousins off guard, since he's still getting used to the new system. But I just think Vikings got speed. They got a stacked defense. That's going to be loss number 1 for the Niners. Texans at Patriots.
Yeah,
pretty
Patriots.
safe win for the Patriots, I think. Bucks at Saints. not much needs to be said on this one. Saints scoop that one up easy.
Yep.
Jaguars at Giants. I'm going with the Jaguars on this one.
Same here.
Okay. Chiefs at Chargers. My AFC flop team. I'm going to stay consistent with this and say the Chargers are going to pick up this game.
Yeah. You know, the Chargers might be another sleeper, actually.
They might. I considered them, and yeah, they could be scary, especially since that division has a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Heck, they could even win the division, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if Kansas City doesn't play well, the Raiders have lots of questions, and the Broncos aren't going to be that great. So, yeah, they could win that division. I hadn't even thought of that before now. Cowboys at Panthers. Panthers.
I have Cowboys.
Oh, you have Cowboys. All right. That'll be a good game. I'm going to try to watch that game this week. Seahawks at Broncos. I'm going with the Seahawks just because I don't trust anything about the Broncos right now. Who do you pick?
I picked Seattle. Even with the gutting process, I think they're still a better team. Yeah. I can't see the Broncos winning more than 6 games this year.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. Redskins at Cardinals. I picked the Cardinals.
I went Washington.
Okay.
I'm trusting Alex Smith this game.
Yeah, this was kind of a 50-50 pick for me, and I just went with the home team because it's the first week. But yeah, I could see this going either way.
Yeah.
Bears at Packers. Packers.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm hoping for a good game. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know they're your sleeper, but I doubt this is one of the ones you picked.
No, it isn't. I picked the Packers on this one.
Yeah.
Jets at Lions. Going with the Lions.
Same here.
And Rams at Raiders. Going with the Rams.
Yep. So we only
I think we only differed on we differed on Titans at Dolphins.
Washington at Arizona.
Yeah, Washington at Arizona and
Dallas at Carolina.
That's right. So for our viewers, if you want to actually check to see how good we did, you can just rewatch this episode on the Neuralizer YouTube channel and see whether we were right or not. You're going to be able to do that every week because we're going to be doing predictions every single week. So next up, we have the game to watch. For me, personally, I can't get away from saying San Francisco at Minnesota. I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch. And being a Niners fan, it all the more going to be awesome. What's your game to watch of the week?
You know, that's up there. I'm fighting between Atlanta and Philadelphia and Houston at New England because, you know, we're going to see Deshaun Watson's going to be back. How healthy is he? How good are the Texans? The Patriots aren't as good as on defense anymore. Has Tom Brady stayed ageless now that he's 40? Or actually, he might have turned 41. Is he still ageless? And, you know, how good did Jones get through that? I know there was like that chemistry that was off, or the bad chemistry off the field with the contract negotiations. And is Philadelphia still the team to beat in the NFC? So if I had to go with one of those two, I'd probably pick actually the first game of the week, Atlanta, Philadelphia.
All right. I'll be watching both the game I said and the game you said. Those are going to be great games. So next up, who do we think is going to make the playoffs this year? We're not going to do records, but we are going to list our teams. So for me, in the AFC, I've selected New England, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Oakland, and Indianapolis to be the 6 representatives from the NFC. The 6 representatives from the NFC, sorry, did I say NFC? I meant AFC. From the NFC, Philadelphia, Minnesota, New Orleans, LA Rams, Green Bay, and Atlanta. I, in retrospect, may have changed Kansas City to the LA Chargers, but I'll keep my list for now just because I'm a person that has integrity. So who are your 12 teams, Joseph?
Well, first of all, you still going to keep that Raiders pick after everything?
Yes, I am.
All right. So for the AFC, Pats, Steelers, Jags were the same there. I have the Chargers for the West, and then my wildcard teams are the Texans and the Chiefs.
Texans and the Chiefs. Okay.
Oh, sorry. And then for the NFC, Packers, Rams, Eagles, Saints. And then the wild card, I have Vikings and Niners, only because that North division is going to be so stacked with the Packers and Vikings. I think the Packers will slightly edge them out.
Okay, so the only one we differ on in NFC is Atlanta, I think.
Yeah, and they were my flop, and I have my sleeper as the Niners in. So
okay,
awesome.
awesome.
I want to spend some time talking about this really quick. Just how in terms of records and being stacked. So the AFC, I think Pats and Steelers are clearly the 1 and 2 seed. It's going to be just like last year. The Steelers may have a better advantage if Le'Veon Bell is healthy. They have a bigger advantage to be the number 1 seed than the Patriots. Mm-hmm. But they're going to be 1 and 2 regardless. And then for the NFC, I think the fight between the top 2 seeds is Packers and Rams. I know the Eagles were good. Yes, they won the Super Bowl. The Vikings are also stacked. But if the Packers beat out the Vikings for that North Division, and we saw how good the Rams were already, and they got better, I'm picking Packers and Rams for the top 2 seeds.
I think I agree with you. I'm struggling with what to do about Minnesota, though. I think Minnesota is going to give Green Bay a run for their money this year. I think Green Bay might edge them out. But as far as I'm concerned, anything could happen in the playoffs. I mean, I honestly don't know. Minnesota is one of those teams that I want to say they're going to be 13-3 this year, but I don't know if they will actually be that good, or if it just in my head that's sort of the team that they've become. That's what they're hyped to be.
Yeah.
So
what about the Eagles, though? How do you think the Eagles?
The Eagles are 13-3 last year. Carson Wentz had a good year.
They're starting Foles. Yeah, they're starting Foles.
So why are they starting Foles?
They want to give. I think they want to give more time for Wentz. I think they probably want to prove, because they gave Foles a good size 2-year extension. I think it was 2 years, $26 million.
Okay.
Or maybe 3 years, $26 million. And so I think it's A, give Wentz a little bit more time to rehab, and then B, who knows, if Foles starts hot, then just keep him until he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
Just go with the hot hand.
But regardless, what we might see, I would not be surprised to see 3 13-3 teams sitting at the top of the NFC.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then even with the Saints at maybe 12-4 nipping at the heels.
Yeah.
Of them. So NFC, for the first time, I mean, last year it was the case, but previous to last year, I think the AFC was either sufficiently better or definitely better for the past 10, 15 years. So it's interesting to see this change.
All right. So our last segment for this, our last piece of this segment.
MVP predictions.
Yes, is MVP predictions. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back from his injury and is just going to break the bank. What do you say? I think for me, this just seems kind of like an obvious pick, but what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, he's been no worse than the 3rd best quarterback in the league past 6-7 years. I mean, it's basically been, when Manning was there, it was Manning, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers. Take your pick, right? Argue with who's 1, who's 2, who's 3, so forth. But since that's been gone, it's Breeze, Brady, Rodgers, and now that he's back and he's healthy, and I think he's got some fire under his tail. He wants to win. He really wants to be a great, and he needs that extra ring in his mind. So he's going to go out there. I think they definitely had a net gain positive from their offseason. So adding Jimmy Graham was pretty big. I know they lost Jordy Nelson, but Devontae Adams is going to be a big piece. We've seen him grow the last couple of years. So still have Randall Cobb. So yeah, he's going to come out. I think he's going to have another top 15 season of all time. His 2011 season was just insane, and that's definitely a top 10 quarterback season of all time. We'll have to have a segment about that in the future. But he's going to put up, I think, like an all-time season and win. And my backup, in case anything happens, is Drew Brees. So I think you had a backup as well. Who's your backup?
My backup was Jared Goff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think with that team around him, I think he can do great things. He had a solid season last year. He's only going to keep getting better. He's sort of my Deshaun Watson of last year.
Okay. And even Todd Gurley, I mean, we'll have to have an MVP talk about, what positions are worth what and can a non-quarterback win and if they should, how. But Todd Gurley could be fighting with Goff for even just team MVP.
Yeah, he could be if he has another amazing year like last year, for sure. All right. So that concludes segment 6. So we've got our Hall of Fame news. So Joseph had some news he wanted to share about the recent Hall of Fame ceremony and some little tidbits about our beloved Terrell Owens.
Yeah. So 8 guys were inducted into the Hall of Fame this past year. For me, the 5 notables, or the guys I recognize, there were a few others, I think, I think from more the old school or coaches. Brian Dawkins, a great defender for the Eagles for many years. Brian Urlacher, one of the best linebackers of all time, played for the Bears. Ray Lewis, probably even better than Urlacher, just was fearsome to see Ray play for the Ravens for so long. And that Dirty Bird defense, you never wanted to see him coming up the gut running at you. Randy Moss and then Terrell Owens. So it was interesting to see, 2 probably top 5 linebackers of all time, and then definitely 2 top 5 wide receivers of all time. I mean, Randy Moss and Terrell Owens are no doubt in the top 5 wide receivers of all time. But the big thing is just how Terrell Owens' Hall of Fame candidacy has developed since he retired. So this was his 3rd year of eligibility that he got in, and I think it's a shame. I may even go so far as pathetic that he didn't get voted on the first ballot. I know he's been kind of a drama guy, and off the field had a lot of issues, even on the field. But I actually went back and watched a video on T.O. recently, and a lot of his highlights and a lot of his quote-unquote antics on the field. And, a lot of them actually weren't even that bad. I actually kind of liked him. Like the classic Sharpie, he was with the Niners out of the sock. Like, that was great. And when he went to the cheerleader and took her pom-poms, or, the popcorn through the helmets, dude, my favorite was when he was, on the Niners and he goes to the Dallas Cowboy symbol after a touchdown and, spreads out his arms and, look at me. And then he tries to do it again, and one of the defenders pushes him over. And then when he was a Eagle, I think he did it as well. Or when he was eventually a Cowboy, some irony there. But just amazing. This notion that you have to be like a saint off the field to get into the Hall of Fame is not only absurd, but it's also contradictory. There's so many players you can name. I mean, think about all the NFL players from the 70s and 80s, just tough-nosed, kind of jerks, didn't really care about you and how they played. Even if we went to other sports, basketball, especially baseball, they have their own issue with who they vote in. It's kind of sad. Unless the person had like explicit criminal activity, then this whole like off the field integrity and character, it's like, dude, just leave the person alone. If he didn't do anything illegal or absolutely rash or what most Americans would see as highly immoral, then okay, he's a drama guy. So what? But he just put up some monster numbers. I'm going to read off some of these stats here, and it's one, a shame that it took him 3 years to get him in, and 2, they did not do a tribute for him. He decided to not show up for the ceremony. I think he had it at his college, which is fine. But the fact that the NFL as an institution did not do something for him is really sad. Even if they took it as him kind of giving them the cold shoulder, they should have done something for him there as kind of this more public institution. I know they're, I guess they're private, but as publicly represented and enjoyed by fans, they should have done something for NFL fans just because he decided to not show up. So only Jerry Rice has more receiving yards. Right, the guy has nearly 16,000 receiving yards. He's been consistently good. He had 9 times he had 1,000 or more receiving yards. 8 times double-digit touchdown receptions or more. He's third in touchdown receptions, and he's sixth in overall receptions. I mean, that's insane. And he has one of the greatest single-season games of all time. He had a 20-game reception against the Bears in 2009, which was only recently broken by Brandon Marshall. So, lastly, 6-time Pro Bowler and 5-time first-team All-Pro. So, the fact that he did not get in the first year of eligibility, for him just being a drama guy and, maybe annoying at times, I think is sad. And
it just sounds like a pride issue to me.
Yeah,
with the
and
NFL.
I read some comments from them, and why he didn't get in, and just, trying to kind of save face, right? We care about how our players look and blah blah. I think it's bogus. So
They clearly don't, which is the funny part. They clearly don't. There's so many antics, so many things that they are okay with. It's a complete double standard. But
we'll have another segment later on, for those who care about this, about who should get into the Hall of Fame in the next coming years and what the criteria should be, and even who of the players that are playing now, if they retire this year, may get in. So look forward to maybe the next 3 to 5 weeks with a segment on that.
Sounds good. All right, so I think we're nearing the end here. Thanks so much, everybody, for viewing this episode, our very first episode of the Practice Squad. Joseph and I were really, really excited to get this show off the ground, and we're really looking forward to episode 2 next week, where we can actually talk about some real games. We're going to have Thursday night, Sunday, 2 Monday night games, and we will be with you at 8:30 p.m. live next week for episode 2. Please come and join us. We're going to have some great discussion. Bring some popcorn. Bring your half-drunk beer
ready
from the game that you were watching. We'll be right there with you. So that's a wrap for us. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to Neuralizer on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad. All right, I think that's it. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.
Peace.